Billy the Kid, a name that still echoes in popular imagination, is one of the most iconic figures of the Old West. His story is marked by bravery, audacity, and an unmatched skill with weapons. Known for his speed and dexterity, he was the terror of New Mexico, leaving a trail of death and chaos wherever he went. His legend was built not only by his actions but also by the way he became a mythical figure, a true symbol of rebellion and resistance against authority. His figure is surrounded by mysteries and questions that persist to this day, such as the true nature of his death. The American West, with its vast landscapes and relentless harshness, was the perfect backdrop for the rise of characters like Billy. He was not just another outlaw. He was the prototype of the tragic hero, someone who rebelled against a corrupt and violent system but, at the same time, became part of that very system. Billy the Kid did not only flee from the law, he also challenged the very laws of morality. His life was a constant flight, and his death, an enigma that only fueled more of the mythology surrounding his name. In 1881, Billy the Kid was declared dead after a confrontation with Sheriff Pat Garrett. However, the mystery never completely dissipated. Many believe that his death was not a definitive end, but only a part of a much larger story. Some theories suggest that Billy may have escaped and lived under another name, feeding the idea that he never truly died but was turned into a legend by those who wanted to see him as a martyr. What really happened on that fateful night of 1881, when Billy the Kid was supposedly gunned down by Garrett? The truth is that, to this day, there are many gaps and doubts about what occurred. The official version is the one transmitted by the authorities of the time, but it seems too simplistic and even too convenient. How could such a clever and slippery figure like Billy be caught in such a predictable situation? This raises questions and theories that continue to fascinate those who seek to unravel the mystery behind Billy the Kid's death. The confrontation between Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett, which resulted in Billy's death, is one of the most discussed and debated moments in Old West history. Garrett, a sheriff known for his determination and coldness, had a history of hunting down criminals, but his relationship with Billy was different. Initially, Garrett was an admirer of Billy's skill, but their relationship grew tense as Billy became increasingly dangerous and famous. Garrett was assigned to capture or kill Billy, and it was he who ended the life of one of the most feared outlaws of the time. The most accepted version of the story says that Garrett managed to capture Billy in 1881, and he was killed while trying to escape. Garrett shot Billy while he was in a dark room at a friend's house in Fort Sumner. However, the location and circumstances of this shootout have been the subject of numerous investigations and speculations. Most people believe Billy was in a vulnerable position, but some argue that Garrett did not kill Billy at that moment, and that Billy's death was staged to protect the sheriff from reprisals. There are also those who believe that Billy's death was a setup to resolve personal and political issues that went beyond the conflict between sheriffs and outlaws. Some theories say that Garrett had reasons to eliminate Billy because he knew the young outlaw was an icon for many, and that his death would bring widespread repercussions. But the questions remain. Was the shootout real or just a performance? Did Garrett really kill Billy? Or was there other involvement in the outlaw's death? These questions have never been fully answered. The mystery surrounding the confrontation and Billy the Kid's death continues to fuel legends and theories. If Billy was not killed by Garrett, what happened to him after the night of 1881? Garrett himself, in some of his statements, seemed to doubt the official version. He appeared uncomfortable with the circumstances of Billy's death, and many believe he knew something that was never revealed to the public. The confrontation with Garrett, therefore, became not only a story of violence but also the starting point for the enigma that persists to this day. After Billy the Kid's death, several theories emerged suggesting that he did not die in 1881 but instead escaped to live a secret life. Some of the most fervent supporters of this theory argue that Billy, with his skill and cunning, could never have been captured so easily, let alone killed in such a simple manner. These theorists suggest that Garrett, although known for his dedication to capturing criminals, had reasons to cover up Billy's true death and allow him to escape. If true, Billy would have lived his final years under another name, possibly in a distant location, off the radar of authorities. One of the most interesting theories claims that Billy survived his death and continued to live under the name Brushy Bill Roberts. In 1950, a man named Brushy Bill appeared in public, claiming to be Billy the Kid. He detailed his story, saying he fled after the shootout with Garrett and spent the rest of his life in secrecy. Although many consider this story a hoax, the fact that the man knew intimate details of Billy's life and the shootout fueled the mystery. However, a concrete proof was never found, and Brushy Bill's identity was never confirmed. Furthermore, some believe that Billy may have escaped to Mexico or one of the more remote regions of the American West, where he could live without being recognized. This hideout would have been carefully planned by him or even by allies who helped him escape death's grasp. In such a vast and unexplored territory, the possibility of someone disappearing without a trace doesn't seem all that improbable. The mystery surrounding Billy, the Kid's escape, continues to captivate those who are interested in Old West legends. If he really did escape, the story behind that escape remains shrouded in mystery. The lingering question is, what would be the reason for Billy to let his legend be built, rather than live in anonymity? Or perhaps, he was so immersed in the mythology that his death was merely an extension of his own legend. Billy the Kid was not just an outlaw, but also a symbol of an era and a struggle against a system he saw as unjust. His story does not end with his death or possible escape, but rather it is carried forward through generations. Billy's figure was nurtured by the media of the time, which portrayed him as the icon of the rebellious bandit, someone who rose against authority and the state. This mythological construction ensured that Billy's legend survived for over a century, immortalizing him not as a criminal, but as a tragic hero of the Old West. The way Billy the Kid was depicted over the years reflects the human desire to create icons from controversial figures. Like any legend, Billy's story was embellished, exaggerated, and shaped according to the needs of those who told it. Many elements of his life were turned into fiction, with some movies, books, and songs giving him almost supernatural characteristics. This only increased the mystery, as the character created by the media seemed stronger, bolder, and more immortal than the real man. The West itself, with its vast landscapes and political instability, became the perfect stage for these legends, where the line between reality and fiction often blurred. Billy the Kid's death, whether real or fictional, became a landmark in American history. But his legacy goes beyond his skill with weapons or stories of his escapes and confrontations. Billy also represents the fight for survival and the pursuit of freedom, universal themes that still resonate with many people today. He became a symbol of resistance and autonomy, qualities that still attract supporters who identify with the idea of fighting against an oppressive system. Even in death, Billy the Kid became an icon of the fight for what he believed was right, regardless of the consequences of his actions. Billy the Kid's legend was also fueled by those who, over time, sought to immortalize him. From the earliest days after his death, there were people who wanted his story to be known. This includes the very residents of the area, who sometimes romanticized his actions, making him even more of a mythical figure. His story does not belong only to the past but continues to be discussed, reimagined, and celebrated in various forms of media, whether in Western films, documentaries, or even popular songs. The perpetuation of his image and legacy goes beyond mere historical memory. It is a reflection of how society deals with figures that represent transgression and challenge to established norms. Billy the Kid remains a fascinating figure who transcends time and culture. His legend is not limited to the Old West but has spread into different realms of global pop culture. The character has become a kind of archetype of the outlaw, a figure of resistance and individualism, whose deeds and challenges continue to resonate with generations that follow. Movies, books, music, and even video games have revived his story, perpetuating the idea that Billy, in some way, never died but became immortal in collective memory. This legacy is undoubtedly fueled by the sense that Billy was more than just a criminal. He was a symbol of courage and freedom. His skill with weapons, his resistance to the authorities, and his status as a people's hero in certain regions made him a captivating and inspiring figure for many, especially those who saw the law as an imposition of an unjust system. Billy the Kid personified the fight for freedom, not only physical but also emotional and psychological. He was the prototype of someone who would not accept the norms of society and was willing to pay the price for his independence. However, this very legacy of rebellion is what also fuels the questions about the true nature of his death. If Billy truly died in 1881, what did his death mean for those who followed and admired him? If he survived, how did that change the impact he had on history? These questions are a fundamental part of Billy's legacy, as they remind us that his actions and his legend have always been more important than the actual reality of the events. The legend that continues to be passed down by succeeding generations places Billy as an almost mythological figure, a symbol that goes beyond his own life and death. Billy the Kid's legacy is also reflected in how Americans and the Western world, in general, treat the history of the Old West. He represents the values of resistance, courage, and the search for justice in a way that still resonates in a world that continues to question the balance between law, freedom, and morality. His legend is often used as a starting point for debates about the nature of justice and power. Even in modern times, Billy's story is constantly reinterpreted because it speaks to something universal: the fight against a system considered oppressive and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Although Billy the Kid became an icon of the Old West, the truth about his death still remains shrouded in mystery. The official version, defended by Pat Garrett, the sheriff who supposedly killed Billy, was accepted by many for years. However, this version has been widely questioned over time, with some evidence and accounts suggesting that Billy may not have died on that fateful day in 1881, but instead escaped to live in secrecy. The fact that the story of his death is surrounded by uncertainties only adds to the enigma that endures to this day. The main doubt arises from the circumstances surrounding Billy's death. The location where he was supposedly killed, the scant documentation about the incident, and the inconsistency in the accounts of those involved fuel the suspicion that something was being hidden. Garrett, known for his determination to capture the outlaw, seemed to have personal and political motives not only to end Billy's life, but also to create a convincing narrative for his death. Additionally, it is unclear why, after the shootout, no one ever found a body that could be definitively identified as Billy the Kid. An intriguing theory suggests that Garrett, pressured to eliminate Billy, may have staged the outlaw's death, helped by allies who wanted to placate Billy's growing popularity. This theory raises the possibility that Billy was hidden or escaped to live a new life under a false name. The idea that he survived his death and lived secretly is bolstered by accounts of people who claim to have seen Billy in distant places, with different identities, decades after the event. The mystery of Billy the Kid's death is not just about what happened that night, but also about what he represented for the West. He was not just an ordinary criminal. He was a symbol of resistance, and his death or escape reflects the complex power plays and interests that permeated society at the time. To this day, the enigma of Billy's death continues to be debated, with each new piece of evidence raising more questions than answers. His story is one of struggle and survival, where the truths are as murky as the landscapes of the Old West itself. Billy the Kid not only became a legend of the Old West, but his name was immortalized as a cultural symbol of rebellion and resistance. Even after more than a century since his death, or possible escape, his figure continues to be celebrated, studied, and reinterpreted in various forms of media, such as films, books, and even popular songs. The legend of Billy transcends the mere figure of an outlaw. It has become an icon of a kind of wild and untamable freedom, attracting both sympathizers and critics, but always with an aura of fascination. Billy the Kid's impact on popular imagination is evident in the continued construction of his image in Western films, documentaries, and comic books. He has been portrayed in countless ways, sometimes as a tragic hero, other times as a villain, but always with an irresistible charm. The image of the young outlaw, fearless and always on the run, represents not only life in the Old West, but also a man's struggle against a system that seemed unyielding. What makes his figure even more interesting is the ambiguity of his character. He was not completely good, but also not completely bad. Billy personified a certain justice, a morality of his own, that defied the conventions of the time. Moreover, the name Billy the Kid carries with it a mythology that has been built over the years. Over time, the stories about him became more enigmatic and fantastical, adding almost mythical elements to his life and death. Some consider that his death was not the end, but just another chapter of his legend, one that would perpetuate from generation to generation. The mystery surrounding his death fuels the narrative and perpetuates it, as a story that never ends, always open to new interpretations. Billy the Kid also directly influenced other outlaws who came after him, such as Jesse James and Butch Cassidy. His story created a mold for the Old West bandit, someone who defies the law but, in some way, becomes a cult figure. Today, his image is immortalized in various forms of art and culture, showing how Billy the Kid's character is not just a story of a criminal, but a powerful allegory about freedom, rebellion, and the eternal conflict between the individual and authority. Despite all the theories and speculations about Billy the Kid's life and death, one truth remains. The mystery was never solved. The legend that was built around his figure and his death continues to fascinate scholars, historians, and even the general public. For over a century, Billy's story has been told, retold, and reinterpreted. But what really happened on that night in 1881, when Billy the Kid was declared dead, remains shrouded in shadows. Did he really die in that confrontation? Or did he manage to escape to a secret life? Or perhaps, it was something even more complex, a web of conspiracies and interests that were never revealed to the public? The fact that so many questions remained unanswered is what still fuels the search for new evidence. Numerous investigations, books, and films continue to emerge, trying to give a final verdict on Billy's story. Some experts still believe that his death case will never be fully clarified, and that he will remain a legendary figure forever, largely due to the enigma surrounding his life. The lack of concrete evidence about his death or escape makes Billy more than just a criminal in history. He became a metaphor for the legends that the West produced, and like other myths, his story will never truly be unraveled. This quest for truth, or the confirmation that Billy escaped death, reflects a human desire for definitive answers. However, Billy the Kid's story has become a story where answers, if they exist, will not be easy to find. Every clue that surfaces, whether through historical documents or personal accounts, only serves to add more mystery and depth to Billy's figure. This happens because Billy the Kid's story was made to be a legend, a tale with uncertainties that only increase its fascination. The longer time passes, the more he distances himself from reality, becoming an icon, a living legend of the Old West. What makes the enigma of Billy the Kid so powerful is that it continues to challenge our understanding of history and truth. In a world where answers and explanations are often seen as the key to understanding the past, Billy reminds us that there are moments when mystery is more valuable than truth. His legacy, no matter how much we try to solve it, remains one of the most fascinating stories in American history. Billy the Kid is not just a figure from the past, but a story in constant evolution, one that will continue to be discussed and reinvented by future generations.